Les Lapins Sauvages. Before the reality wars, when human history was shredded by improbability missiles, a scientific exploration vessel was sent to a distant planet. Probes had demonstrated a hospitable atmosphere, and Voyager drones subsequently established climate farms. However, even with the latest technology, it was still a 6-year journey from Earth. The vessel, a converted Delta P-class long-haul freighter, was fitted out with rows of small cages. These contained laboratory rabbits, intended for an experiment in accelerated evolution and adaptability. Once at their destination, additional genetic information would be coded into each specimen before their release into the wild. These rabbits were accompanied by a team of geneticists, biologists, veterinarians and handlers, while the more eminent scientists, along with most of the cabin crew, were destined to sleep for the duration of the voyage. Junior staff were timetabled to take care of the rabbits in rotating shifts. Katia Collins was one of those appointed for this mundane task. Katia, however, didn't mind too much. Rabbits had always fascinated her, and the voyage presented an opportunity to complete her doctorate. It would be impossible to undertake the studious research needed within much less than the time frame the expedition offered, and the idea of space travel really interested her. The only other alternative to such an experience would be to volunteer for a few months every year as a medevac assistant on a Guardian satellite, but that wouldn't help with her doctorate. And anyway, it didn't appeal. Geopolitical tensions were brewing again. Earth didn't feel safe, Guardian satellites less. Billionaires were still pouring their capital into space exploration and the foundation of off-world colonies. That's what this mission was intended for. Compared to her old friends, isolated from reality and plugged into the vacuous netherworld of Gateway, this would pass for a proper life. She had loved rabbits since being given one for her 5th birthday. She named it Honey and was devastated when it eventually died of old age. Such was her sense of loss that she had kept enough physical mementos of Honey to hopefully clone her. That was what had pushed her into studying biology and genetic coding. That was why she had ended up on this mission. She even covertly wanted to upload Honey's DNA into the acceleration code. She understood the ethical, financial, scientific, objective, and legal implications of such a contamination, it being sabotage of sorts. But if this experiment was successful, then Honey, if not resurrected, would at least have a legacy. Every 3 months, Katia would wake up to worsening news of the situation back home. Rival corporations were posturing. There had been armed takeovers of several quarters. Sleepers the long-term empathy forum users would suddenly be informed that their dreams were now the property of a rival corporation, they would rarely be concerned. They would continue dreaming under a different banner. No one cared who owned the feedback bins, which hung eerily over the horizon like a neon blue sunset, and Katya was now far away in space with the rabbits. At least what she was doing was real, in real time, in real space, in real life. She owned her boredom as fiercely as her pleasures. Tedium to her was like stepping on a discarded tack. It meant something concrete, if not necessarily pleasant. In this way, it had greater powers than the pain-free somnambulance of Gateway. She understood the knowing smiles of the elderly maintenance men. There was a code among co-workers. Something understood. Long-duration sleep, despite its visibility, was a personal matter. Once awakened, time needed to be given for acclimatization. Sleep is a deeply private affair, hidden, secret, as are the things we need to help us sleep. We'll curl into the bedding we choose, the clothes we select to sleep in, the comforting, familiar objects we take with us. Katya was known for what she dreamt in, be it her white rabbit onesie or her rabbit t-shirt with matching rabbit shorts and socks. It was an open joke that she herself gladly went along with. She was noticed for being someone actual, not just the pale imitation of an avatar. Eventually, a year or two into the mission, when restrictions inevitably slackened, night and day became indistinguishable, and the casual slovenliness of long voyages crept in. Her night clothes became her day clothes too. Shoeless, though strictly against regulations, she would slide in her rabbit-printed socks along stainless steel floors, or pad around in her rabbit onesie, playing a flute or springing bunny-like from corners. Co-workers liked her. She was crazy, Katya. She was a character. People wanted to be on her shift. She had things to talk about and inspired conversation. Away from the empathy forums, she shone like a bright star glimpsed through a porthole. In space, she flourished. Others wished, forthrightly, that they had such interesting and funny clothes. Most just wore the regulation grey, all-in-one compression night suits when they came off shift. Despite the adverts claiming their reliability from top to toe for everything from long-duration gateway sessions to long-haul space flight, Katya found them restrictive and unwearable. However, for all her open, playful eccentricity, she kept her souvenirs of honey a closely guarded secret. Contamination was always the watchword. Each time she awoke from a long-duration sleep, news from Earth grew darker. Mission sponsors changed with each shift. New logos appeared on screens. Still, the mission remained unchanged, and this gave some sense of stability. Eventually, these ultimately superficial changes became comical. They took an edge off the news. Earth was a long way away now. Katia would joke, "Who's sponsoring the Space Bunnies this time?" while flopping around in rabbit-related sleepwear come daywear that grew increasingly at odds with events on Earth. Katia's gateway name had been Katia Space Bunny 422, but out here, she was the only Katia, the Space Bunny. And of course, the test subjects by now were also her Space Bunnies. Each time Katia would wait for a new shift, she would ask with a yawn, "How are the Space Bunnies?" And this eventually became the mission catchphrase. Space stops being serious after a while, especially if you have the right crew members. Better to be essential at the bottom than promoted precariously to the top. There was greater job security and less anxiety. Katia grew to love her work and the friends she made among fellow shift workers. The further she got from Earth, the happier she became. She started to wonder what she would do when she returned and what would happen to her. She felt the best years of her life would be spent on this mission. Eventually, she decided she didn't want to return. Her nightmares weren't of being lost in the infinite depths of space. Her nightmares were of being lost again in the infinite banality and anxious insomnia of an economically depleted and ecologically doomed Earth, spasmodically at war with itself, violence exploding at random over zones of interest. The experiment was intended to test how quickly, with accelerated evolution and enhanced epigenetic nodes, a species could become fully adapted to a new planetary environment. Katia would joke about a rabbit planet. The idea intrigued her. How far could acceleration be taken? How much could a rabbit progress? She studied rabbit embryos, compared them with images of human embryos and hominid skulls. She mused over texts on neoteny. She created three-dimensional models. She knew this experiment would be limited, but what if it wasn't? She had big dreams, and she dreamt well, pondering the potentials as she slipped through hibernation shifts, unethical, unscientific, subjective. Katia would fall asleep smiling at the implications. Her final hibernation ended early. An emergency meeting of all crew members had been convened. 5 weeks into her last scheduled sleep, all contact with Earth was lost. It had been for some time now, too long even to allow for or factor in transmission anomalies. All screens were dead, all signals down, due, presumably, to the deteriorating political situation at home. However, this could not be confirmed as the sole possible reason. Investment had gone into freefall and then tanked. Though whatever the reason may have been, they were still on course. Trajectory and speed were stable. There were sufficient rations, but for now at least, they were on their own. They were close to the subject planet, which had already been partially terraformed, though no personnel remained from those previous missions, as nature had been left to run its course. The most suitable terrain for touchdown had already been determined and duly entered into the navigation parameters. They could land and continue as planned, or return to an uncertain fate. The issue was swiftly debated and the decision effectively unanimous. They had come this far, the project would continue. Once the situation on Earth was resolved, rescue craft would doubtless be sent. If circumstances on Earth could not be resolved, then they would do their best to live on as an echo of Earth, a distant outpost of the human diaspora. The final weeks passed by. The craft slid towards the twin suns. They watched the planet's moon in awe as they made their approach. The planet grew larger and larger until it eclipsed space, the light from the suns just washing over it. A landmass loomed before them. After the tranquility of the cosmos, the craft seemed to rapidly accelerate, even though it was slowing down. Events sped up as they approached their destination. As with all flights, there was an element of fear before the impending touchdown, though the greatest shared sensation was one of relief. The voyage was over. They had arrived. The crash warning was totally unexpected. The other technicians followed strict emergency protocol and made for the impact booth. Katya, against orders, insisted on remaining in the converted cargo hold with the rabbits. She felt safer there. She had unpleasant memories of shelters and closed spaces. Lights flashed, alarms sounded, and events seemed to freefall. Katya remembered the car crash when she was young. It was during the first incursion. There was a sudden, unexpected information attack. The shields had failed. There was a sudden control cut. It only gave time for a garbled warning, a half-heard siren. But her mother had told her to relax. Her voice had been so smooth, so reassuring, even as they could see the concrete wall fast approaching. She heard her mother, calm yet clear. Once again, she remembered how, with little more than cuts and bruises, they had survived the crash. Again, Katya did as her mother had told her. She relaxed completely. Around her, the rabbits appeared unconcerned, chewing on lettuce, as Katya imagined the tension in the impact booth. "All stations brace," came the command from the intercom. An alarm briefly sounded. There was a jarring bump, a bounce, another bump, and the raw slice of brakes. Katya snuggled into a rabbit suit as crash blades mushroomed around her. A brilliant white blossomed through the metallic screams of twisting steel. As if on a fairground ride to heaven, Katya swirled over and under and over inside a soft and dazzling cloud. There was another sharp thud. Everything went black. Katya relived playing in the garden with Honey. She remembered lying on her back, holding Honey above her head, repeating, "Katya loves honey, Katya loves honey, Katya loves honey." She recalled the setting light of a summer sun, daisies all around, as she played simple tunes for Honey upon her flute. She thought of Honey's face twitching close to her own. It was her favourite memory. The safety light flashed, no longer above, but at an angle, in the same position occupied by that sunset from her childhood. Katya slowly came to. The memory, her dream, dissolved into reality. There was a rabbit on her chest, peering at her face. Shreds of white crash bag surrounded her like damp cobwebs wilting from the morning dew. The rabbit flickered its nose and scampered off. Katya lifted her head as her eyes followed its path. The research station looked intact. A few of the cage doors had been displaced. Emergency use only panels had burst to release crash bags. A few water dispensers had ruptured, but given the circumstances, nothing more serious. The rabbit hopped back into its cage. It wanted more food. There was a crackle from the intercom. A trembling, delirious voice repeated, "Update failure! There was an update failure!" Other voices could be heard behind it, distorted, begging for a reply. Katya got to her feet. The stainless steel floor was wedged at an uncomfortable incline. Stairs that once led up now led down. Katya followed them to the communication point. The wounded voice from the command cabin was fading. With difficulty, Katya slid open an observation hatch. The cargo hold had come loose from the rest of the craft. She could see flames a distance away. She realized this must be the command capsule. The delirious voice had gone silent. Flames now crackled through the intercom. There were the jagged remains of a terraformed silo. The craft must have hit a climate farm. She could not even begin to absorb the thoughts and emotions that rushed through her mind. She needed to locate the impact booth. Hopefully, it would have also been jettisoned and saved from the flames. The background voices must have come from there. Wherever they were still obviously in danger and distress. Katya had never seen herself as lucky, helpful or heroic before. Now perhaps she could be all three. Climbing down to the intercom, she tried connecting with the impact booth directly. The signal was muffled. There were sounds of panic. Senior crew members trying to assert authority over rebellious technicians. Shouts of, "This one's stuck too! They're all stuck! I can't see outside! It's going dark! We're sinking! Oh God, help us! We're sinking!" Katya shouted into the microphone, but no one seemed to hear her. She climbed up to access another viewing hatch. It was like the climbing frame in the playground from when she was a child, only reinserted into a true nightmare. Katya struggled to push the viewing hatch up, panicking that it was stuck, before realising she now needed to pull it down. The voices from the intercom faded. She watched in silent horror as what remained visible of the impact booth. A few girders, a pathetic corner, lurched and bubbled into a vast slurry lake that had formed, unattended and unintended, behind the climate farm. A chance to be useful and heroic had passed. Now she was merely, debatably, lucky. In shocked, thankless futility, Katya screamed into the intercom, "I will continue the mission! I will continue the mission!" She looked around, slowly absorbing the situation. The rabbits, the space bunnies, were hers to care for. She could at least succeed into this. Partly by instinct, partly by routine, she tended the cages, made sure the rabbits were safe and secure. fed and watered before curling up beside the cages, falling. She dreamt of her childhood, though not this time the idyllic summer garden childhood, but the childhood interrupted by a corporate takeover incursion. Almost without expectation, their city had become a zone of interest. The information attack had been a warning, but most of the adults had shrugged it off as bluff, just bluff. The sirens wailed in her head, orders to evacuate, soldiers ushering them to shelters, her mother screaming her name as Katya rushed back to save Honey, snuggling the rabbit close to her chest, running through the shadows of panic to the safety of her parents. They were hustled underground, a heavy door slammed, everything went dark. She could hear missiles, explosions, gunfire, more sirens, and then she woke up. The alarm for morning shift had sounded. Despite its position, the cargo hold remained fully functional. Katya steeled herself. Yes, I will continue this mission. In the pouch of her onesie, she caressed the package containing Honey's genetic details. She had never imagined herself as a mother before, but there was something of the maternal in her attention. Katya's thoughts wandered back to the incursion, the incident when she was a child. She remembered, after a dreadful wait, the shelter door being forced open, though explosions and shots still echoed. She remembered the fear of the adults surrounding her. Who was opening the hatch? One of ours or one of theirs? She remembered the split second of relief before more panic, being told to run further back, that transport was waiting. In the distance, as her eyes grew accustomed to the daylight, Katya could make out other soldiers advancing, slowly, eerily, towards them. "Gas troops!" exclaimed her father. She had never heard his fear before. "Are they robots?" asked Katya. "No, they're men. Robots are too expensive," was her father's sad reply. Soldiers gestured the little family away. A truck moved forward. There was gunfire. A soldier rolled out of the truck and onto the ground. Katya thought he might be acting at first, like in a film, but then she realised the soldier must be dead. They ran past more dead soldiers and then to a barricade. There was a sign. It read, "White Dream Perimeter." "What's White Dream?" asked Katya, as her father lifted her and Honey into a waiting truck. "It's the antidote," was his reply. Sitting between her parents, Katya looked out of the truck as they drove away. The explosions were subsiding, drowned out by a terrifying hiss. Katya buried her face into Honey's fur. When the van stopped, all was suddenly calm. They were given tea and biscuits. There were tables, like at a garden party. A nice, nurse-type lady gave Katya a tablet and a glass of water. Katya's mother dropped the tablet into the glass. Katya watched it froth and dissolve. "What's it for?" asked Katya. She had had something similar once before when she was ill. "It's for the gas," replied her mother. "But I haven't got the gas," Katya exclaimed. "The nightmare gas," said her father, opened eyes as more trucks and ambulances trundled into view. Katya knew better than to ask her father what nightmare gas was. One of the trucks stopped nearby. A soldier with a gun jumped out, gesturing back and ordered, "Get these kids something too." Other soldiers with guns, bigger guns, pulled some of the gas troops out of the van. They didn't look like robots anymore. They didn't have their helmets on. One had a bandaged head. They looked scared. They had their hands in the air. They looked like some of the bigger boys at school. They were only boys. This is why we pay insurance security. This, muttered her dad. The gas troops, who were only really just boys, just sad, terrifying, trembling boys, were sat down at another table. One of them began to cry. The nice, nurse-type lady gave him a cup of tea. "Don't worry, lad," said one of the soldiers, ruffling his hair. "We won't shoot you. It's not like they say." Katya stared at them, open wide, biscuit in hand. "Our lads look so much bigger now," said her mum wistfully. Another soldier gave the boys a phone. "Let your mums know everything's okay." Suddenly, a plane flew low overhead. There was a whistle and then a loud explosion. Katya dropped her biscuit. Honey jumped from her lap. "Don't fret, it's one of ours," smiled the soldier. "Where's Honey?" shouted Katya, jumping to her feet. Honey had scampered towards some trees and then stopped, love overriding instinct. She looked back at Katya. A soldier scooped up Honey in his gloved hand. Katya was suddenly more frightened than ever. What would the soldier do to Honey? The soldier smiled sadly and handed Honey over. "Take care of your pets. They don't understand as much as we do." A soldier with a camera rushed over and gasped. "Special Public Relations Squad, can you do that again? Is that okay with you?" asked the soldier, reaching for Honey. Katya looked uncertain, but the nice nurse-type lady nodded affirmatively. The soldier with a camera asked her to get in the shot too. "This is great stuff," smiled the camera soldier as he took pictures. A few hours later, they were told it was the old clear. They would be allowed back home. Premium members would be driven by car. Mum and Dad must be premium members. That's why they made sure to scan the bonus coupons, thought Katya with pride, as they were ushered into a particularly special-looking car with SPRS on the side. "Isn't this nice?" smiled Mum. But Katya had already fallen asleep, Honey tight in her arms. It was dark by the time they got home. Mum heaved a sigh of relief. "It's not that bad." When they said about fires, "Look," interrupted Dad, holding his phone for Katya and Mum to see. "Katya's in the news." And there she was, with the soldier and the nice nurse-type lady, and most importantly of all, with Honey. The boy soldier gas troops ate more biscuits in the background. They looked less scared, just undernourished. Katya would see that photo a lot over the next few months, even in shops and posters in the street. When the insurance assessor came to their house, he recognised Katya and Honey. "So this is a famous little chap," grinned the assessor. "She's a girl," retorted Katya. "Her name's Honey." "Hello, Honey," smiled the assessor, stroking the rabbit's head. "You've been a very good girl. You've brought in a lot of business for us." He looked at Katya, straight in her eyes, sincere and important. "Thanks to her, you won't have to worry about university fees when you're older." The insurance man was right. Katya didn't have to worry about university fees, but right now she pondered where a university education had got her. She looked out from the observation port, watching the twin sun set for the first time. The slurry lake had stopped bubbling, the ripples had subsided. Katya imagined it to be silent now. The command capsule glowed bright red, but the flames had died. Everyone but her had died. Everyone but her and the rabbits. She looked into the far distance of the galaxy, back at where Earth should be. Humanity seemed very, very small. Katya remembered when Honey had died. She was 14 again. Everyone told her she had a bright future ahead, while Honey was already very old for a rabbit, and she had lived a long time, a long, loved, happy life. Honey would want Katya to embrace the future, and Katya would do this, but Katya would not completely let go of Honey. Memories were not enough. There was fur, a tooth, claw clippings, enough for a full genetic reading. These were the real memories, and real memories could advance in any direction. Katya made certain all the space bunnies were secure in their cages, and that the transit wires were plugged firmly into the interface collars. The experiment would begin on schedule. Katya uploaded Honey's data and incorporated it into the acceleration sequence. She knew the procedure off by heart. She had rehearsed it so many times that she had fallen asleep, clutching tight to what would become Honey's legacy. The task was made slightly harder by the awkward angle of the screen, so the rehearsals had proved essential instead of neurotic. Start seemed such a banal word for what she was about to do, but as there were no witnesses, as there was no fanfare, it mattered little. In the beginning was the word, and the word was start. No one even remembered the reality wars. They were prehistory, strange artifacts and remnants, nothing more. Humanity had risen and fallen several times since then. No one even remembered the word Earth. Academics just spoke of the fertile planet from whence humans had first emerged. That planet was now mostly sand, inhabited by tribes barely worthy of the name civilized. Few people knew or cared where they had come from. Scores of planets now faced ecological collapse as culture and science, economics and politics, warfare and innovation weave their toxic threads. Once more, billionaires sent ships in search of acceptable planets, planets more distant than those which humans had already forged unfit for habitation. On a planet far away, a planet deemed sufficient to merit such a voyage, the crew, beyond deep blue, were astonished to find evidence of prior human exploration. Decrepit pylons, rusted panels, water silos, and booster parts lay spread about. Among this space junk, from which primitive structures had been fashioned, rabbit-like hominids were gathered before an ancient human skull, perched high upon an altar. Metallic drums sounded, a flute played, the creatures chanted in devotion. Honey loves Katya. 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 Honey loves Katia. 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 Honey loves Katia.
Honey